over there. So that is NHL 94.
Yeah, I went and looked. EA Sports NHL 94 is what that is.
Why do I remember it looking different? Is it because I was playing on a PC versus like a game system?
I don't know. I never played it on a PC, so I don't know.
You would have had to pick the right game for what you were using, like the right version of it.
Yeah.
And I want to say it looked different, but I should find out. That's probably something you can find out. I don't have, of course. This actually isn't that much of a given when it comes to me, but I don't have the game anymore.
Nor do I.
NHL 94.
I don't.
But I, like you, turns out, spent, countless hours.
Oh my gosh.
Playing out seasons on
I
that
don't think
game.
we
There
kept.
it is.
I don't think we kept stats and standings, but we were into it.
Here at the draft room. Bills and Browns Sunday afternoon. We've every day talked about this very interesting and for the last couple of years different season in the AFC. No Chiefs. We'll see about Baltimore. Right now you've got some new contenders, and the Bills may end up having to go on the road. If they started the playoffs this weekend, it would be Jacksonville. Let's talk about them for a bit with Mike Dempsey, football diehards, also Jacksonville radio host. He's been on with us many times, although not in a while. We don't play this year, Mike, so we haven't had the, that week's conversation about the Bills and the Jaguars. But I don't know, maybe surprising isn't the word you would use, but, impressive season so far from the Jags.
Oh, it's definitely surprising. I actually picked them to win 9 games, and in part because of the way the schedule's set up late in the season, and it's kind of playing out that way, but they got off to a much better start, I think, than almost anybody anticipated, and were able to keep it rolling. And, the midseason edition of Jacoby Myers turned into the long-term edition of Jacoby Myers with the contract they gave him yesterday, and right now things are clicking pretty well.
Do you think it was a matter of, well, you just said they got off to a fast start, but I think the offense is really humming now, and Myers is in the middle of that. Brian Thomas Jr., I know from fantasy, has had an uneven year mostly. Do you think, just adjusting to Liam Cohen and his offense took a while for Trevor Lawrence and the receivers? Is it firing on all cylinders now, Mike?
Yeah, I think more for Trevor Lawrence adjusting to it. I think, the Myers addition was more about just having a guy with a reliable pair of hands. Brian Thomas is plagued by drops. I don't think that has anything to do with knowing the offense. That's just executing when the ball comes your way. And he had a lot of that early in the season. The Jags led the league in drops. I'm not sure if they still do, but they had a sizable lead at one point in drop passes, and I think that held the offense back. But they were able to run the ball early on. They were leading the league in rushing for the first few weeks of the season, and that helped them get off to a good start, so it wasn't as paramount. Plus, they were turning teams over on a ridiculous pace early on. And, last year they had 9 turnovers for the whole season, and they've blown past that now. And, when they play complementary football like that, getting the ball back, getting some short fields, offense is starting to click. You're seeing the results.
3 or more takeaways for Jacksonville in each of its first 4 games. Week 5 is the night game win over Kansas City, and it's only 1, but that was like a 95-yard interception return or something, right? The one takeaway 98. They had against the Chiefs. Okay. Mike Thomas, it's a positive story. I don't want to bring up a facet of it that isn't going well, but, this is fantasy football. This is a late first-round pick or early second-round pick this year, and I think it's a mystery. You mentioned the drops already. I wonder if there's more to it. It's got to be a mystery to most of us why this hasn't gone better with Lawrence, performing and the coach and the offense is humming. Is there any better explanation for kind of what happened to Brian Thomas Jr.? Yeah,
I think in part they're learning he's just not the kind of receiver you want to send over the middle that much. He that's not his forte. He lives outside the hashes, basically, in Liam Cohen's offense. Now, that doesn't mean he'll never run a crossing pattern, but, it's more selective, and I think they try to use him in all different capacities. Last year, they just had nothing offensively, so he really took off. Mac Jones was hammering him with 10 to 12 targets a week for the last 6-7 weeks of the season, and, he put up a lot of numbers, but a lot of that was he'd hit one big play. Now they're mixing him in, and he's not getting as many targets, but lately they've been effective. His body language is good. He seems to be leaning into where they're at right now, so he's not pouting or anything like that. And I just think that, last year sometimes guys just get an overabundance of targets, and if that's your sole concentration, that guy is probably going to put up some numbers, but it wasn't leading to winning football for the Jaguars last year, and it certainly wasn't this year. And now, Jacoby Myers comes in, plus Parker Washington has been really good over the middle. Brenton Strange was their leading receiver when he got hurt early in the season. In fact, I don't think, with the exception of the Cincinnati game, which the league, they got one of those calls like, hey, we blew it for you on a fourth down pass interference, which would have ended the game. They called a pass interference to extend the drive. Jags would have been 5-0. They would have been undefeated in games that Brenton Strange has played this year. He has been a force in the middle of the field and just destroying people as a run blocker and pass protector. So I think it's a lot of different things. It just took a while to find the strengths of these receivers and how they fit into Liam Cohen's system and to kind of divide up the responsibilities. But now you got a guy in Myers who will take those big hits over the middle and can hang on to the football. And if the ball gets to his hands, he's had one drop in 6 games, and it was noteworthy because it has been so good with him just being sure-handed. And, sometimes I guess that's all it takes. And, Jacoby Myers is a former 1,000-yard receiver. He's been good in this league, but he's been fantastic for the Jags. And that helped Brian Thomas and everybody else take their game up a level.
It feels like another one of these examples where you should take everything a coach says during the spring and summer with a grain of salt, because something that really got my attention about the Jaguars when Liam Cohen first got there was the offense is going to run through Brian Thomas. So like, wow, this get back to the fantasy point. Like, I think a lot of people would have thought that he was going to have a monster season when you hear a new head coach talking like that, and it never really developed early. And now their passing offense is being, sprung by Myers. How much of a pleasant surprise? I mean, Myers is an accomplished player, but has he exceeded? I mean, the contract extension maybe tells you yes. What expectations were, because he's had a tremendous impact there, it seems.
Yeah, on the Brian Thomas thing, I think that was their intended plan, and then they got around him and realized he's not that type of guy, and that's okay. Yeah. He's a really good player. He's not Jamar Chase. But anyway, in terms of the Myers thing, yeah, I think he has exceeded a lot of expectations. I don't think anybody, 6 weeks ago was thinking he'd be getting a $60 million extension. But now you look at it, and this front office has done a really nice job. But they also signed a guy like De'Ami Brown based off of a couple of playoff games when he had never done anything in 4 years, and he got over $10 million. So I paid Jacoby Myers 10 times what De'Ami Brown's made. So the way I look at it, $20 million is a bargain. But yeah, he's been just a breath of fresh air for this offense and kind of the final piece. And now you can line up with your deep threat and BTJ, and you can have Myers, and you can have Parker Washington, and you can have Brenton Strange. And if you need a big-bodied guy when you go with 4 wide, you bring in Tim Patrick, and he's been pretty good. And Brown is an afterthought now, and they just feel like a more complete receiving unit, core, whatever you want to call them at this point.
With Mike Dempsey, Mike Schopp and The Bulldog here at the Draft Room downtown today on WGR. Well, Mike, I mean, it wouldn't surprise you. The Bills have been into the playoffs, fairly deep even for 5 or 6 years in a row. And this year, you're watching them. You see New England rise up. Kansas City is out. Look, it's a different-looking playoff picture. What does it look like from your perspective with the Jaguars? I imagine in Jacksonville, you're having the conversation largely that maybe they're having in places like New England or Seattle, for sure, where, hey, it's wide open, we're good, who knows?
Right. I mean, look, nobody, first of all, making the play, it's still, if they make the playoffs, which are almost a lock to at this point, it's going to be a hell of a year. And they're coming off a 4-win season, guys. I mean, you've got a brand new coaching staff and all the differences that come with it and all the adjustments you've had to make. You lost your first-round pick, who you gave up so much to get, who you expected to make a big impact on both sides of the ball. Your second pick that you made was your first of your 2 third-rounders, never played it down this year. So you're getting nothing out of your top 2 draft picks. And so for that to be the case, and it's not just that they added some guys, it's that this coaching staff is getting good performances out of guys that were holdovers like Devin Lloyd and Travis Etienne. But in terms of the AFC picture, absolutely. Look, they beat Denver this week. They're in the catbird seat for at least the number 2 seed in the AFC, and that means a minimum of 2 home games if you win your first one. And who knows? I mean, look, would anybody be surprised if the Texans were the 7th seed in the playoffs or the 6th seed or whatever, if they had to match up with the number 1 seed in the second round and knock them off? I mean, you could have the entire AFC playoffs come through your place if you end up at 2 or 3, if it falls a certain way. So I don't think people are getting too far ahead of themselves. They've got a game to play and win, and I think that's been, it's cliche, but they're focusing on the task at hand. They clearly weren't looking past the Jets last week. Trevor Lawrence put up a career-best game. They put up 48 points. So they are focusing, and I think the loss to Houston over a month ago, where they had a 19-point lead in the fourth quarter and blew it, has galvanized his team, and they talk about it in the postgame every week, like, hey, we're not going to let that happen again. We're not going to let that happen again. So I think they realize they've got a great opportunity, and you set your goals, but then when you start to achieve them easier than you thought, in terms of wins and competitive and making the postseason, then you raise your expectations. So why not? I mean, in this year in the AFC, no apologies to Buffalo, there's no great team, in my opinion. There's nobody who can't be beat. Lace them up and let's go find out.
We've spent a good amount of time here, Mike, talking about the offensive side of the ball. You mentioned the takeaways and Devin Lloyd's name. How about that side of the ball in its entirety? Like, what is the calling card there? We've seen the Bills struggle with blitzing teams and pass rush with Houston. Atlanta was blitz heavy, and the Bills looked like they'd never seen the blitz before that day. What about Jacksonville on that side of the ball? What's the calling card?
I think to a lot of folks, the turnovers are going to stand out, right? They've been just outstanding. They are right up there with Seattle in terms of creating the most turnovers in the league. But for me, I think it has to be the run defense. I mean, the Jaguars are giving up the fewest yards of any team in the National Football League. The Broncos happen to be second, by the way. They're more known or more thought of as a pass rush, pass defense team with Pat Surtain. But the Jags are giving up less than 90 yards a game total. Nobody's hit 100 yards on them. Jonathan Taylor had, I think, 74 against them, and that's the most they've given up to a single back. Mahomes went over 50, and he was like the third leading single rusher against the team this year. So, and again, they're doing that. The front seven has not been remade. They're just playing better. They moved Eric Armstead inside because they played him out of position, the last coaching staff, as a defensive end, something he had never done. And he and Devon Hamilton have been good. The ends are good run defenders as well as pass rushers. And Devin Lloyd's having a career year in the linebacking corps. Boye Oluokun is as solid as it comes. So they're just getting a better level of play. You give a lot of credit to Anthony Campanelli, who's come in and his schemes have put them in the right position. They rally the ball. They're a better tackling team than they've been in the past. I don't know how you just turn the switch and make the same guys play better, but this coaching staff is showing you that the staff, matters, maybe not as much as the raw talent, but it's a combination of the two, and they're getting better performances out of these guys. But run defense, holding teams to under 90 a game has to be the number one because that can travel in the postseason.
Mike is the guy, and I've said this to him before on previous visits, that I mentioned when sometimes I get into a conversation with a friend who thinks I play too much fantasy football because even at my lofty number, Mike is way above me, I think. And we're in one league together, which has been fun for years, and this year especially for me because I'm finally good, even though I got relegated, Bulldog.
Oh,
it's a great league, defensive players and all of this. Were you able, so I'm prefacing this question with a reference to how much volume we're talking about. Were you able to do well enough being able to avoid the pitfalls of the first round, whether that was Thomas toward the end or, Malik Neighbors gets hurt. That's tough. Justin Jefferson, Mike, one of the stories of the season in fantasy, just like how for the first time he wasn't quarterback proof. If you got enough Gibbs or McCaffrey, maybe you don't mind too much. You survived it.
Yeah, I have a lot of McCaffrey, but look, I'm like everybody else. So let me put it this way. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, it was all Gibbs or McCaffrey for me or bust, because you're not always in position to get those guys, right? So, yeah, I've got my shares of Brian Thomas at the 1-2 turn, or Ashton Genty, or, you name them, Justin Jefferson. Hey, that's the thing. Justin Jefferson has always been what we call quarterback proof. Hasn't mattered. Tons of volume. They'll be good enough to get him the ball. Well, until they're not, and we're seeing it this year. He's had less than 40 yards in the last 3 games combined. So, no, I did not avoid all the pitfalls of round one. I like to scare people. People say, how many leagues are you in? I go, about 150. And they're like, wow, that's crazy. But you and I know, guys, that you play in these best ball leagues, you draft them, and then you're done. And, there's no management going on with it. So I managed 12 teams, and 6 of them made the playoffs this year. So for me, that's a super low percentage. So I would say round 1 and rounds 2 through 15 got me a little bit this year.
What do you want to do with Jefferson in Dynasty? Just, you can't really, it's probably past trade deadline time anyway, but not somebody going to the offseason that, you're going to get a great offer for, maybe? Are you interested in buying Jefferson?
Oh, I'd buy him for sure. The guy his talent's undeniable, right? And who knows? Maybe they decide that they've got to move on from J.J. McCarthy. Maybe J.J. McCarthy, after a year of ups and downs and has his feet wet, improves. But there's no way I'm selling him now, because you're going to get pennies on the dollar for Justin Jefferson. It's just not a good investment. He's still young enough that you could afford to hang on to him for another down year and still recoup a lot on the back end. So I think he's a hold if you have him. He's a buy if somebody is putting him out there. And, you got to drive a hard bargain. I'm not going to give you what I would have given you before the season, because that's part of the negotiation. But I still think he's a top 5 dynasty asset at wide receiver. He's just way too talented and way too much of a proven track record.
One more for you, Mike. James Cook. So last year, the big touchdown spike. He still really didn't get that much of a bump in fantasy drafts because maybe, we condescend to touchdowns and
regression was coming for him, right?
But here he is, second in the league in rushing, not by much, behind Jonathan Taylor, 10 rushing touchdowns so far. Will next year be the year where, if you don't object to me putting it this way, like he finally gets that respect from the fantasy community? I'm as guilty as anybody because I tended to avoid him again this year.
He should, right? Really, he should be a first-round pick, at least in redraft for next year. But I think you'll see him more as a second-rounder next year. I think there's still the fear that Josh Allen has those games where he just takes over and he runs for 2 or 3 touchdowns himself, which limits the upside of Cook. Not that he hasn't scored a bunch of TDs. He's got 1,400 yards and 10 on the ground this year, another 2 receiving, as you guys well know. So it's hard to argue with his production. I think he's a safer back than probably a lot of the guys that we were taking. And I'd rather have him than Devon Achane, just based on Achane's size. I always look at that guy and think he's going to blow away, but it's not like Cook's the biggest guy. But yeah, I think will he get it? If he doesn't, it'll be to our benefit, because I think right now you could easily justify taking him in the first 12 picks if you were drafting today for 2026, and I don't think you're going to need to have to do that to get him in most cases.
Mm-hmm. Probably right. Last year or this year, he was kind of a 3-4 turn pick, Cook, and you look at some of the names.
Absolutely, in front of him. Right. Yes.
We just didn't really trust it, I guess. Not everybody, but I'm guilty, like I said. Well, thank you, Mike. Got to be enjoying this Jaguars season. Maybe we'll get that meeting in a few weeks between Buffalo and Jacksonville after all. Thanks for your time, and happy holidays.
Fantastic. Thank you. Happy holidays to all your audience, and always great to be on with you guys.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Dempsey, 1010XL in Jacksonville and on the Jaguars Radio Network. Jacksonville at Denver late Sunday.